seat. And there's this case. The passenger riding in this Chevy Astro van was killed and the driver seriously injured when they were rear-ended. The police report says the driver and the front seat passenger were propelled into the rear of the van as the seatbacks collapsed. GM settled this case out of court without admitting fault.
By now, you might be wondering, if this is such a big problem, why don't you know more about it? The answer is simple. The seatback problem has been overshadowed by larger safety issues like how to protect people in a front or side collision.
The overwhelming majority of highway deaths in all types of vehicles occur in front and side impact crashes. But there are deaths from rear-enders too. In fact, more than 1,400 people died in rear-end collisions in 1994.
No one knows for sure exactly how many of those are caused by weak seats. Police usually don't keep records that way. But there's little question that weak seats contribute to highway deaths and very serious injuries.
They can range from people who are lucky, who may happen to not strike a hard object, to the more serious injuries, which are paraplegia, quadriplegia, or serious head injuries, fatal head injuries, as in the case of Mr. Baird.
Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors all declined repeated requests to talk on camera. All three U.S. automakers told us, though, more rigid seats could actually make things worse, causing whiplash and other neck and spine injuries. And they say they designed their seats to manage and absorb some of the energy of a crash.
If the seat were to give 5 inches, it'd be fine. But that's not what happens. The seat fails.
Joan Claybrook is the president of the consumer advocacy group Public Citizen and the former head of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the government agency that sets the safety standard for seatback strength, a standard the big three automakers say they exceed.
The current standard is based on a 1963 industry standard. This is a totally out-of-date standard, so exceeding the standard means nothing.
And it's not just minivans. In the last 10 years, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has found seat problems in a wide variety of cars, trucks, and minivans. And since the 1970s, graphic evidence of seatback weakness has been shown in test after government test on gas tank safety. And still, the federal standard remains unchanged. But what angers the Baird family the most is this. 4 years before George died in his Plymouth minivan, this 30-mile-an-hour crash test was run on a similar model. Watch what happens to the crash dummies. The Bairds say it's hard to believe the government and Chrysler consider this adequate protection.
That's when you get angry. You know, that's when you realize there's definitely a problem with the design of the seat and something should be done about it.
And it can be done. Mercedes and BMW are among the few automakers who have built stronger seats. And the government showed U.S. automakers how to do it 20 years ago, building this stronger, safer car. This car's seats can withstand a 50-mile-an-hour rear-end crash. And as the late Lorne Green concluded in this public service announcement,
in each test, the driver and passengers would have walked away.
Most automakers never made that car. But in preparing for a seatback trial, Sachelski built what he says is a safer seat. He fashioned a seatbelt for the back of the driver's seat, reinforced the seat tracks, and added a higher headrest. But Ford says there is no real evidence that Sachelski's seat is any safer. General Motors says its current seats work well and that Sachelski's design is simplistic. To see how his seat would fare in a crash, Sachelski compared seats. He reinforced this driver's seat. The passenger seat on the left is the one that came with the van. In this crash test that he conducted and filmed, the passenger seat collapses. The reinforced driver's seat yields but holds.
If Mr. Baird had been in this strengthened seat rather than the one he was in, do you think he'd be alive today?
No doubt in my mind, this is a stronger seat. It held the occupant upright and away from collapsing into the rear where Mr. Baird received his fatal injuries.
Does this seat cost a lot more than what people get in minivans today?
It would have been about $10 or $15 to strengthen it the way we did as an after-the-fact kind of modification.
Based on his testing, Sachelski petitioned the government to strengthen the seatback standard. That was in 1989. In 1992, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said it could not definitely establish that a safety problem exists and said it needed more study. But 4 years later, the agency tells Dateline it hopes to decide if it's going to do anything by the end of the summer.
If the public thought that they had a chance of becoming brain damaged or quadriplegia or paraplegia because of the lack of strength in the seat, and it cost, $15 or $20 to fix it, they'd be outraged.
I don't have my dad. My brothers, they don't have their dad anymore either. And this isn't going to change that, and the settlement isn't going to change that. And the only way I feel any better about this whole thing is if I can help other people and to make sure it doesn't happen anymore.
In a letter to Dateline, General Motors said the issue of seatback strength is complex and said it's developing a new seat called the catcher's mitt to better withstand collisions. And if you want to check around, some custom auto shops will reinforce the seats in your vehicle for added safety.
This is Dateline Sunday for March 24th.